America, we got to get back to doing what's expected of us as free citizens in this democracy. That means being tolerant, being respectful, staying informed, and being engaged. I'm former Congressman Joe Walsh. Follow me here and join the millions of Americans who are renewing their social contract with each other. The social contract, it's on us. Hey, it's Friday. It's in fact Good Friday. To all of my fellow Christian brothers and sisters, a reflective, thoughtful Good Friday today. One housekeeping item here from me, former Congressman Joe Walsh, this Friday. The No Kings merchandise is here. You want your No Kings hat, your No Kings t-shirt. We got a bunch of No Kings stuff. Go to oneflaginitiative.org. That's the website, all one word, oneflaginitiative.org. Go there and get your No Kings ball cap, your No Kings hoodie, t-shirt, whatever. No Kings in America, right? By the way, today, the 250th anniversary of Paul Revere's infamous ride. Study up on that ride. Google that later today. Bring yourself up to speed on that important piece of American history. My guest today is a young man who I am just a big fan of. Eyal Yacobi. Eyal and I got to know each other. Hello, my friend.
How you doing?
Pretty quickly after October 7th. Good to see you, brother. Yael is a great defender of and warrior for the state of Israel. He was one of my go-tos. He's been one of my go-tos these past 18 months or so when it comes to all the protests that have been going on our college campuses post October 7th. He's a good follow. You should follow Eyal at EYAKOBY on Twitter. Yael, thank you. And thanks for coming on. You and I are tied at the hip when it comes to support for Israel. We're tied at the hip on a lot of things. We're obviously not tied at the hip on Trump. And I, in fact, disagree with a lot of what Trump is doing to sort of combat how he sees to combat anti-Semitism. So I know you and I disagree on some of this stuff. Let's start here. Let me start with a question. What's so far 3 months in, when it comes to Trump, the government trying to do something about anti-Semitism, what are you a fan of so far? What have you liked with what he's done?
Definitely. First of all, great to see you, Joe. Always
You too,
a
brother.
pleasure talking. I think it's more about the nexus of what anti-Semitism represents in the broader society. To me, it represents the collapse of society. It references the scapegoat of blaming your problems on quote unquote the Jews, and that once the Jews leave, then all your problems will be solved. And it's actually the inverse, that then society is absolved. And so in terms of EOs that President Trump and his team have done, I think defunding UNRWA, I think pulling out of the UNHRC, I think passing executive orders to hold universities accountable. I think the deportations have been great. And I think the idea at large that the government is now looking at this and enforcing federal law is a warning sign to everyone else to stop the ridiculous chaos that has been happening for the past 18 months.
So let's start with because I want to focus on his efforts on combating anti-Semitism. You and I will disagree with plenty of other shit that Trump's done or doing, and we'll never probably come to any kind of agreement on that stuff. When it comes to Trump coming down on universities, to get them to be more aggressive against anti-Semitism, specifically, what do you like what he's doing?
Specifically, what do I like what he's doing
What
when it
he's
comes
doing,
to
his approach with universities, trying to get universities to do something to be more aggressive when it comes to combating anti-Semitism. What do
yeah,
you like?
I think he's taking a no nonsense approach. I think not only freezing but threatening to withhold billions of dollars in taxpayer dollars to these universities. I think actually deporting students who violate the law and have no business remaining in the United States of America. I think the actual investigation that is happening in the first place is critical as well. And it's clear that the federal government does have a lot of power in terms of influencing these universities. And look, these universities can do whatever they want. At the end of the day, they just can't do whatever they want while they're taking in billions of dollars in tax dollars from the federal government.
Do you have a problem with the Trump administration, in essence, threatening to take away grant money? I'm going to assume, IL, that the grant money, say, that Harvard gets, that the government gives Harvard to conduct research and innovation. I'm gonna assume you generally think that's valuable money that the government does give our universities around the country to conduct this research. Generally, do you approve of that? The work that our universities generally do when it comes to using this grant money?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, we are the envy of the world when it comes to the innovation and research that Harvard and other universities do. So that's money well spent. Do you have a problem with Trump saying, I'm gonna hold up on this money. I'm not gonna give you this federal grant money. I won't get into the constitutionality of it or the legal aspect of it, because obviously Harvard and some of the other universities will take him to court. But unless you do A, B, C, D, E, we're going to take away this valuable grant money that benefits all Americans. You're okay.
I think that's a little bit pedantic to say that it's you're saying it's A, B, C, D, E. It's not random things that he's tying the federal money to. He's tying it back to the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which Harvard has violated repeatedly and is taking no steps to actually correct themselves. And we know that there were issues at Harvard because of the fact that once President Trump assumed office, Harvard did institute immediate changes. Immediately, they instituted changes. So clearly, they already knew that they had a problem on their hands in these 16 months. This is 2 months back, leading up to that moment.
And Yael, what is the problem? Like what Harvard and some of the other universities, and let's be clear. You and I both oppose anti-Semitism. I think the crux of where you and I disagree, I am really, really fearful and loath and to have the government intercede in private affairs to do anything about anti-Semitism. Right now,
Harvard's violating titles. What if they're violating the law?
I am extremely loath to have the government interfere with universities, companies, anybody when it comes to trying to do something about anti-Semitism. And if they're violating the law, the government needs to be really freaking clear and make a really compelling case that they are violating law. But outside of that, what have these universities not done in your mind over the last 18 months?
I mean, we can go by case example.
No, I don't need that. Just broad strokes.
Let's talk Columbia. I think that's the best example. Columbia's had 4 building takeovers causing hundreds of thousands of dollars in damages. They had an intifada in Cameron, which took over campus for 4 weeks, shut down campus, no classes, and graduation was canceled.
So
And,
let's start there. Let's see where we can find some common ground. So post October 7th, you got no problem with students rising up and protesting Israel, protesting whatever, peacefully protesting. That's all on campus. You're fine with that.
yeah, I just don't think that's existed. If I'm being totally honest,
Well,
I
go
don't
ahead.
think, I don't think the campus protests have been peaceful whatsoever. And I think it's similar. If after let's say George Floyd, you had a bunch of white students go on campus and wear white robes, and start chanting Tulsa, Tulsa, Tulsa while they surround the Black Student Union. I personally would be advocating for those students to get consequences. And likewise, on October 8th at my university at Penn, the students and professors organized a rally where one of the speakers said, "I salute Hamas for a job well done." Clearly, there's a problem.
So stop there. You're not, Ayel, you're not saying in the 18 months post October 7th, where we've had these protests, demonstrations, riots, a mix of everything on campuses, you'd acknowledge that there's been plenty of peaceful protesting on campuses, in addition to plenty of stuff that got out of hand and plenty of stuff that violated campus policy and violated the law. You'll acknowledge there's been some peaceful
Yeah,
protesting.
I was being facetious, of course.
Right. And again, I'm always trying to find common ground. You and I support the peaceful protesting aspect of this, right?
I don't support it, but they have the right to peacefully
You
protest.
support the right to peaceful protest. You and I support the right of college students generally peacefully protesting, saying, "I hate Israel. Israel doesn't have a right to exist." Like, right? You and I may differ on this, IL. Like, to me, a college student has a right to say, "I stand with Hamas." I think an American citizen has a right to say, "I stand with Hamas." Are you okay
American
with?
citizen does have a right to say that they stand with Hamas, but a student on campus, depending the infamous words on the context, the student can get expelled for saying, "I stand with Hamas." Just like if a student said, "I stand with the KKK," I'm sorry, but there would be consequences.
Is
If
that the
not
law?
consequent,
Is that the law, IL, or would that be campus policy?
no, you would be technically violating Title. You would be technically violating Title VI. At the end of the day, is the Civil Rights Act. You would be violating it.
You have a right in America to say, "I support the KKK."
You have a right to say that in the United States of America, but on specific, that doesn't mean you can't do the same stuff in a local park as you can in a private business. You can't do the same stuff on airplanes or movie theaters that you can do while walking your dog outside your house. And so there are different standards that we apply based off of where we are.
I can walk on a street with a sign that says, "I support the KKK."
Yes, 100%.
I couldn't do that in my place of business if my employer didn't want me to do that. There are
Exactly.
differences, there are distinctions. And in fact, colleges are often, right, trying to figure out how to handle constitutional free speech issues with campus policy and keeping things safe on campus. This has
But
been
that's not true.
in
That's not
no,
true. I mean, if you look at 2023, so the year leading up to October 7th, Harvard and Penn ranked 247th and 248th out of 248 schools for free speech by Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression. These schools did not care an iota about free speech whatsoever before October 7th. Then suddenly it's directed at the Jews, and all of a sudden, all of this garbage and this nonsense is suddenly protected speech. Penn canceled Ben Shapiro from speaking. Penn
oh,
students
that's
chased out Mike Pompeo.
IL, that's always gone on. I mean, I got canceled 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago as a conservative from speaking on college campuses. I'm not saying colleges have done a very good job of this. If I were running a college or a university, I'd allow basically all speech. All I'm saying is colleges have not handled this very well this tension between free speech and what a student can say on a campus. I generally err on the side of a student should be able to say almost anything like an American should.
Yeah, but I think universities have kind of made their bet at this point that for the past 2 decades, all they've been doing is indoctrinating students into thinking in sort of one sort of ideological way, canceling other speakers from coming onto campus, not allowing any of that. And then when it's the Jews, suddenly everything's allowed. And we know this because just last year, Penn sanctioned Professor Amy Wax for being quote unquote racist. And so clearly, Penn does have the ability to sanction professors for bigotry and hate, just not when it comes to the Jews. And so the federal government is stepping in and saying, if you're not going to protect Jewish students, then we're going to help you out.
And we're going to help you out how?
By giving you a list of demands.
Like, go ahead, demands.
Well, let me ask, what's the alternative?
Go ahead. Like, I don't want, and maybe I'm just confused because I've got a massive head cold. I don't want any students protected from speech. Do you?
Students protected from speech.
I don't want on a college camp, in my dream world, on a college campus, I don't want Muslim students protected from the First Amendment. I don't want Jewish students protected from the First Amendment. Would you, broadly speaking, would you concur with that?
I think there's boundaries to it. Like, I think the way that I view higher education is that there's a mission, and that is dedicated to learning. That's the mission of a university, right? It's to educate their students. Right?
So you're just to make sure I understand. When it comes to speech, you're making there's something unique about a college campus when it comes to speech. Yay, nay?
Not in terms of law, just in terms of my understanding of what higher institutions of learning should be. Like, the whole point of it is a free exchange of ideas and to challenge yourself. I'm saying, however, when your education is getting trumped, no pun intended, from students and professors who are shutting down campus, even if it's in a speech way, in a peaceful way, you can still shut down campus, then you're infringing on the rights of other students. Other students paid.
Completely agree. Then this is always an interesting point. Then you've moved out of speech. I have a right as a student to say Israel sucks, Israel sucks, Israel sucks. I do not have a right to stand in front of a classroom and not let students enter a class while I'm yelling Israel sucks, Israel sucks, Israel sucks. I have a right to say Israel sucks on a college campus. I don't have a right to bully or threaten Jewish students.
But think about it even more simply. Think about it in the sense of there's classes happening and there's a rally outside that is, using 3 megaphones to chant. That still infringes on what the students in the classroom are doing, which is why prior to October 7th, if you wanted to have a rally, if you wanted to have a table to canvass, whatever you want, you have to get approval from the university and make sure that there were no midterms, there were no classes happening. But since October 7th, for some reason, if you're supporting Hamas, you can bypass the code of conduct, you can bypass the school policies, and simply be able to yell and chant and disrupt wherever you want.
Agreed, and you and I agree on this. The colleges generally, post-October 7th, handled themselves generally poorly. They allowed much too much of moving beyond speech and moving into interference and bullying and disruption. 100%. You and I agree on that. And that's on the colleges and the universities. My issue is I don't want the government to come in and say, you've got to do this or hold the $3 or $4 billion in grant money over a college's head unless you do these 4 or 5 things. The Trump administration has quite literally made demands on some of these universities that exceed a power and authority that I'm not at all comfortable with.
What are the demands that you take issue with?
Demanding access to Harvard's hiring, demanding access to Harvard's admission data, wanting to
But
audit student
why is
viewpoints.
that?
Huh?
Why are they trying to access the admissions data? It's because Harvard just lost a lawsuit that they were discriminating against Asian students in the admissions process.
It's none of their business. Auditing
It is.
student viewpoints, telling wanting a say in curriculum, in the types of professors Harvard might hire, where they are politically. I don't want the government having any say in that. Do you?
Well, I mean, to an extent, yes, because when Harvard's failing their core mission of keeping students safe and educating them,
Stop. That's Harvard's core mission. That's not yours, and that's not Donald Trump's core mission.
Well, Harvard's
Who's
allowed to do whatever they want. They just can't take billions in federal dollars and
So
have generous tax exempt status.
okay. So that's kind of where you come down. It's really this grant money. That's kind of the cudgel that the federal government can hammer. Harvard can do whatever they want. They can have mostly progressive professors.
I mean, they do. 96% of Harvard
Right.
faculty donated to Democrat
And
campaign.
it's always been that. I'm older than you, IL. It's always been that way.
It's
I
not
get
been
it.
like that. It's not been like that. In the early 2000s, it was a 70-30 split. It's only become more and more one-sided.
It's generally always been one-sided, though. Colleges and universities have always been this way.
For sure. But don't you think there should be an effort then to get other viewpoints as professors?
Always. The question is, should the government force that effort? No, I don't want the government.
No, but that's not what Donald Trump was. That's not what President Trump was doing.
Well, when two things. When you threaten to withhold valuable, as you and I both acknowledged, research grant money, that is what he's doing. When you threaten to go after Harvard's tax exempt status, then you are kind of saying, unless you play ball, and I want to see more conservative professors, and I want to see where your students stand on
when
issues.
did President Trump ever say that he wants more conservative professors at Harvard?
It's part of their demands. They want to say in who Harvard hires. They want a more diverse teaching staff. I don't want the government having any say in that.
But that's not what Trump. That was not one of the demands of President Trump.
That's one of the demands to Harvard. They want to see. They want to see faculty political viewpoints. A breakdown of faculty political viewpoints.
No, it was looking into hiring practices, and it's a good thing that they did that, because just last week, the dean of, I think, the public health school had to step down after there was a lawsuit brought against him for financing.
Do you want the federal government having anything to do with the professors that a private university hires?
It's not a private university. They received $9 billion in federal funding. It's not
a private university that receives government funding for research.
Then I'm confused. Why they have a $53 billion endowment? If they were so broke, why can't they break their endowment?
I'm not saying they're so broke. I've never said they're broke. They have a very healthy endowment. I agree with that.
So I'm saying
my question was, and I don't care if it's Harvard or the University of Illinois, do you want Joe Biden or Donald Trump ever having a say in who Penn or Illinois or Harvard or any college or university hires to teach at that university?
No, but I don't think that's what. But that's how. No, but that's all that's happened.
IL, you're not telling me that that's not part of this. That again, you and I agree. Harvard, right? Faculty's left of center. The Trump administration would like to see more balance in their faculty, more balance in their student viewpoints. I get all of that. It would be great if our universities were more balanced when it comes to professors. I think the difference between you and I is I don't want the government forcing that.
Yeah, but that's not what's happened.
It's I think it's a big part of what's happening. But even if
Where
you
does
and I
it say that?
disagreed on that, is that something you'd approve of? Like
No.
you wouldn't.
I mean, I guess there's certain boundaries that I would put on it, but overall, I'd say no. I don't agree with that.
Damn you! I'm curious about what your boundaries might be.
Saying if you start
That's
hiring
okay.
people, like I'm saying, if you start hiring Nathan Sinwar and Ismail Hania to lead your Middle East Studies program, then the federal government probably should get involved and not have them lead those programs. I'm saying there's certain boundaries.
No, I know, but in general, do you agree with the thesis that a college or a university should be able to hire whoever they want to hire, right? Within the law, if they want to hire an anti-Israel whatever in some department, they should be able to.
Sure.
And you and I should be free to make an absolute frickin' stink about it.
Yeah.
Amen.
And that's what happened in the 2024 election is the American people made a big stink about this very problem. And President Trump is answering the exact thing that I think across the board, and I don't want to shift on topics and then get
It's
all
okay.
over all of Trump's policies, but President Trump has not deviated on a single policy position that he promised during the campaign trail. There's really nothing that should be a surprise to anyone. Everything that he's doing, he has openly stated. There's no hidden secrets with Donald Trump. I was in the room when he said that he would be defunding these universities if they didn't meet and comply with federal law, and that's what's happening. And I think across the board, that's also been the reality. And you were to your credit, you were campaigning very hard against President Trump. You did everything you could to have him not win. But for everyone else that's suddenly surprised, it's like, where were you in the months leading up to the election? If you hate these policies so much, you should have been involved in the campaign trail.
Agree with a lot of that, and that's a whole nother conversation. And I don't think tons of people are surprised. I think tons of people maybe just didn't understand. Like I think a lot of people still don't understand what a tariff is, and so we can go on down the line. But we'll stop the university thing like that because I think maybe we've gotten to a place where I think Trump is moving well beyond. I think as he's doing with law firms and as he's doing with media companies, I think he's using the power of government to basically try to bring universities to their knees as well. And that would scare me no matter who the president is. I don't want a president telling a university what it can do. This notion, IL, of deporting people, you and I've talked about before. This is one of the other tools the Trump administration is using. My concern is people are being deported or student visas are being revoked or attempts at deporting people based on people's beliefs. Am I wrong?
Are you wrong about that?
Am I wrong? Am I wrong that it's, well, actually, let me back up and ask you the more important question first. Do you think people should be deported based on their beliefs?
I mean, it depends what the beliefs are, of course.
Yeah, and I'd probably be much more liberal, meaning open. I think Israel should not have a right to exist. The state of Israel should not have a right to exist. If you're here on a student visa, and that's a belief you have, should you be deported for that belief?
I mean, I'm not going to talk in hypotheticals when we have actual case examples of people getting. No one's been deported. Number one, everyone's gotten due process. I don't know where this notion is that there's no due process. The visas are revoked, right? Is Mahmoud Khalil back in Syria? No, he's still in the United States. Is
Why?
Oz 13
Why is he still in the United States?
Well, number one, because a judge put an injunction on the case itself. but even President Trump just defeated that, and he's still in the United States. He has a court hearing in Louisiana. I mean, this is
No,
how
no,
due process works.
no. Stop. I agree. I think you'd acknowledge, and that obviously one of the most famous ones, Mahmoud Khalil, about 4 or 5 weeks ago. The Trump administration's trying to deport him. Can we agree on
Yeah.
that? Okay.
Oh yeah.
Based on
But he
what?
definitely has due. But he definitely has due process.
No, and I haven't said he has.
Oh,
That
okay.
that Maryland guy was denied due process. That's a separate issue.
Who? Kilmar?
Yeah, Garcia. But this guy Mahmoud still being held. Why do they want to deport him if not his beliefs?
To read through the court filings, I think number one is he was the spokesperson of Columbia University Apartheid Divest. That group openly and proudly took over 4 buildings at Columbia. They proudly called for the destruction of Western civilization. They proudly posted photos of Sinwar, Nasrallah, the Houthis, and a pamphlet, an official Hamas propaganda pamphlet, and passed it out. Now, that's not to mention the fact that they assaulted a Barnard staffer, sending them to the hospital. They kidnapped a custodian in the Columbia Library. The list goes on and on and on. And he's not just some innocent bystander. He was the leader of this organization, a spokesperson of this organization.
Right. He's been charged with no crimes. Am I correct?
No.
No crimes. There are no charges. He's still being held. And I, as best as I can tell, the case against him is he's been one of the leaders in the protest movement. He's got these beliefs. He needs to get out of here. I mean, Rubio said a week ago, talking about these people here on student visas, they're here to go to class. They're not here to lead activist movements that are disruptive and undermine our universities.
Yes, I fully agree with that.
Do you agree with that?
100%, I agree with that.
There's no
reason. Yeah, there's no reason that you come here from Syria and start taking over campus, canceling classes, canceling graduation at Columbia last spring, and then expect to stay in this country. I think that's complete nonsense.
Can you be here from Syria on a student visa and do more than just go to class, though? Rubio said they're here to go to class. That's it?
Well, the preface to that was that he said they're not here to disrupt campus and lead activist movements that disrupt campus. That was the preface to just go to class. It wasn't you need to go to class and that's all.
No.
I mean, obviously that's not true, because we have other foreign nationals that are not have their visas revoked, that haven't led campus movements, and I'm sure they're in extracurricular activities.
You're okay with people here on student visas doing more than just going to class. You're okay with people here on student visas protesting peacefully, becoming activists. Yeah. Are you okay with people here on student visas becoming activists, even activist leaders?
Yeah, but you brought up the case of Mahmoud Khalil. I think we can actually talk about that case specifically, because we have facts about who Mahmoud Khalil was. This wasn't some innocent protester that was trying to peacefully protest.
No, I know. But we keep saying that in every government pleading against him. I've not seen any concrete charges of much of anything. It reminds me of that Tufts University student that was grabbed off the streets a few weeks ago. No charges. Go ahead.
A judge just ruled that the Trump administration does have grounds to.
A judge in Louisiana ruled that the Trump administration, broadly speaking, has the authority to deport him if they want. They have the authority. Now, his particular hearing, I think, will be heard this next month as to the case. So now they'll have the case. Should he be? And Khalil's lawyers will make their best case. All the one judge said was the government has the authority to deport him. Now we'll look at the merits of the case.
Well, we know either way that he's going to be deported because all the Trump administration has to do is include the fact that he lied on his visa application and the fact that he did work at somewhere when he lied to. So either way, Khalil's out of here. But the notion that
I'm
this
not
was some,
saying I'm not convinced. I'm not sure of that, but continue.
I mean, he's definitely not going to be in the United States next month.
Well,
The notion,
hey, my friend, unless you know something I don't know, you don't know that for certain.
I do know that for certain because I know exactly what happened at Columbia University. The
Niall,
I'm continued to be shocked by the short attempt, like the short memory that everyone has for what happened at Columbia University. There was a literal janitor that was taken hostage by these people.
yeah, I'll agree. And Columbia was one of the most egregious. And at every university, there were crimes committed.
Yeah.
There were clear violations of campus policies, and the colleges did a shitty job of enforcing almost all of it. But there was also a bunch of peaceful protesting. Now, all I'm saying is, for the government to make their case that Khalil, this guy, needs to be deported, they need to make the case and connect him to any of the law breaking that went on at Columbia. I don't want him deported because the government doesn't like his views. That's all.
But that's such a, I just think that's such a non-starter because we know that there's so many people who have views that oppose President Trump and his administration.
Right, and we know
we don't see those people just getting picked off the street.
No,
we know
no,
exactly
no. Well, people
arrested.
are getting picked off the streets every day, but we also know over 1,000 student visas have been revoked. I think this is just the beginning. These are two like high-profile cases that caught everybody's attention. Like the Tufts University student that was grabbed off the streets. There were, again, no charges, no crimes, no connection to any anti-Semitic activity or terror group, and she's still being held.
But wouldn't it make sense for if thousands of visas have been revoked, okay, and this movement has to make poster children of who represents them as being a peaceful, innocent protester. If they're choosing Mahmoud Khalil and Mohsen Madawi as their representatives, then I don't even want to know the crimes of the other 1,000 people that have had their student visas revoked. And to your point on Mahmoud Khalil, you're saying it. There has been crimes, there has been vandalism, there has been assaults. The worst campus, Columbia University. What would you call one of the key leaders of this group?
Then I would say, I think it's next month, when his case will be heard. According to you, the government should have one easy ass case to make. And all I'm saying, as someone who believes in the due process and Constitution, I don't want to live in a country, let me finish, where people are deported because of their beliefs. I want people deported because they're genuine threats to this country. I don't want to live in a country without any due process where the government, I'm talking about a separate case now, right? Where the government can pick someone up, put them on an airplane, dump them in an El Salvador jail without due process. You don't, no matter what you and I think of Kilmar Garcia, you and I don't, I'm not going to speak for you. He deserves due process too, correct though?
I honestly, I've no idea about anything about that case, Joe.
Okay.
You see me tweet 24/7. I've not tweeted once about Kilmar, other than the fact that certain elected officials have shown him much more attention than the 5 Americans that have been held hostage in Gaza for the past 18 months. That's the only thing I've tweeted about Kilmar.
Yeah, I get it. But, again, I saw your tweet about Senator Van Hollen. He is a constituent of Van Hollen's, Maryland, which is part of why he's down there. But just broadly speaking, the concept of due process you support.
Yeah, of course.
Boom. Do you support deporting people based on their beliefs?
It depends on what their beliefs are. If you are supporting the KK, it's like during apartheid South Africa. if there was a bunch of white people in the United States that were joining the Klan rallies and the lynchings during apartheid South Africa, then I also wouldn't want them here anymore. I also would be advocating for their deportation. And I think Rubio made a good point where he said, if you said on your visa application what you're going to do when you get to the United States, well, we wouldn't have accepted you. And now that we know what you're going to do, we don't want you.
It depends upon what your beliefs are. That's a good, honest answer.
Well, yes, because we have the immigration law.
So I'm thinking that through, my friend. So on your visa application, if you say you oppose the existence of the state of Israel and you think America's policy in the Middle East sucks, you want to come here to go to school, would that belief say, boom, he shouldn't be here?
I personally would rather that person not be in the United States, but I don't think that's a disqualifying idea. I just think boiling this down.
Stop. I want to make sure I understand you. So that belief shouldn't disqualify someone from being here.
I am not. I'm not an immigration judge. I'm not dealing in hypotheticals of what.
This isn't lawyer to lawyer, man. This is just.
I know, but I'm saying we don't have to deal in hypotheticals. We could just say a better example is saying if Mahmoud Khalil applied to get a visa now, would the United States accept him? I would say hands down, no. Of course not. We shouldn't accept him. Would you agree with that?
No. Well, it depends. Il, I'd want to see what's on his application. That's all. If he wrote on his application, I'm coming to America because I want to fucking burn American universities down. And I think Israel is the most evil country in the world. And I'm going to protest night and day at Columbia against Israel. And if that means I have to break some laws or break into some buildings, I'm going to do it. I'd think twice about that. That's a guy who
know a lot. You know a lot about Mahmoud Khalil. Even just the fact that he was the leader of Students for Justice in Palestine, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Know that we wouldn't have accepted him. He wouldn't have been accepted if he didn't lie. He even lied on his application. We know that he already lied.
If lying on an application or lying under oath was disqualifying of anything, Trump wouldn't be sitting in the White House, and a lot of people wouldn't be working for Trump. I hear you, but that's
totally different. Because that's totally different. No. I'm not letting you get away with that because that's totally different, and you know that.
No, I mean, but that has nothing to do with this. All I'm saying is I'm much more lenient in who I would let in here. You and I are equally pro-Israel. You and I would defend Israel to the death. I don't want to.
This has nothing to do with Israel. This conversation. No, it doesn't. This conversation gets so boiled down, and I listen to clowns like Cenk Uygur who say you're not allowed to criticize Israel. You're not allowed to criticize Israel. While every other word in that guy's mouth is criticism of Israel, no one sees Cenk Uygur being arrested on the streets, nor should he be, for that matter. But this notion that it's anti-Israel rhetoric is just ludicrous to me. We have pictures and videos from these college campuses. We have their statements. This has nothing to do with being anti-Israel. It has to be with doing pro-Hamas, pro-Hezbollah, and anti-Western civilization. And they're not even hiding
it. Just that.
Yes. If it was anti-Israel, do you realize how many people in the United States should be arrested right now? If that
we're not. Well, that's a good point, but we're not talking about American citizens right now. We're talking about people coming here on a student visa, and over 1,000 visas have been revoked. And I guarantee you, Il, if you and I went through those 1,000 student visas and counting that have been revoked, you're not going to find 1,000 people who have pledged support for Hamas. This is my fear. You're going to find people who are pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel.
I just think the idea that you're saying I'm not going to be able to find proof that they're writing down I stand with Hamas. It's like that, that meme that if you're at a rally and someone's holding a swastika flag and no one's telling that guy to leave the rally, than you're at a neo-Nazi rally.
Oh,
It's like the same
no,
thing.
I agree. It's stupid and dangerous to overgeneralize on either side. It's why it's stupid and dangerous to say that everybody protesting on these college campuses the last 18 months is pro-Hamas, which is bullshit. And it's just as much bullshit to say none of these people were pro-Hamas, Joe. They're just pro-Palestinian, blah, blah, blah. The answer's somewhere in between. You'd acknowledge that, right?
No, that's what I'm saying. That's exactly what I'm saying is I'm not going to acknowledge that because of the fact that we've seen Hamas, PFLP, Hezbollah, Houthi flags on all these college
IL,
campuses.
answer me a question. I'm going to ask you for a stupid estimate because I don't know that I understand what you just said. Do you think over the past 18 months, the vast majority, I'll use that expression, of protesters on these campuses have been pro-Hamas, literally pro-Hamas, the vast majority?
I'll one up you. Pro-Jewish blood. Yes.
Pro-Hamas, pro-Jewish blood, the vast
Yes.
majority. Would you say almost all of these protesters have been?
I mean, I'm not going to slap a percentage on it, but I would definitely say that it's a good amount. I mean, let me ask you this.
No, this is really important. It's only really important in this regard. It's because we got to be careful of how we label a movement. So you said a good amount. I asked you if it was a vast majority. You said, I'll do you one better. Is it almost all? Is it almost all of the protesters have been pro-Hamas? They want Jewish blood?
I mean, I think if you actually use empirical evidence and data from these universities, then it becomes quite obvious. Harvard, Penn, Columbia, Brown, UCLA, I mean, the list goes on in terms of students invested in Palestine at those campuses who are the leaders of these rallies.
But we're talking pro-Hamas,
yeah,
pro that terrorist group.
Why else would you?
I want Jewish blood.
So why else would you rally on October 8th? The IDF hadn't even cleared out southern Israel yet. If you weren't pro-Hamas, why would you rally on October 8th?
I'll answer that. And I'm not saying, IL, that of the gazillion protesters in the last 18 months, there's not a percentage that are pro-Hamas. I completely agree with that. I don't think it's most. Why were they protesting on October 8th? Because they hate Israel and what they think Israel is. Or some people came out on October 8th and October 9th before Israel even responded because they are pro-Hamas. But generally, I think it was just this stupid, idiotic viewpoint that way too many young people in America have, that the poor Palestinians are the oppressed underdog and Israel is this genocidal beast. So it was just, to me, it was more anti-Israel. There's a percentage there, but to say it's predominantly the average 19-year-old kid that's been out there, whatever, is pro-Hamas.
Yeah, Harvard-Harris just did a poll last month, and they found that 48% of my generation supports Hamas over Israel. I mean, the data is very obvious at this point.
So that's 48% of your generation, and I'd have to see that, supports Hamas over Israel. And that was the language. Do you support Hamas or Israel?
Yeah, do you support Hamas or Israel?
Even that's 48%. That's not half. So
wait, 48%.
I just think it's
the entire no. 48%.
I know of Gen Z or whatever. Was it Gen Z?
Yeah, well, your question wasn't as the majority of Gen Z pro Hamas. It was of the protesters.
Right.
Let me ask you this: if it wasn't the majority, whatever, and I think we are getting a little off topic in terms of the deportation, is we've seen Hamas flags at all these rallies. We've seen Hezbollah flags at all these rallies. Why hasn't anyone asked anyone to remove those Hamas and Hezbollah flags? Personally speaking, if I was at a rally and there was a Nazi flag or a Klansman something,
what would you do?
I would tell them to get out, or I would leave. I would not be standing next to it.
Agreed. Someone would have a right to fly a Nazi flag. I guess is what
Yeah,
I'm
but
saying.
that's not.
Yeah,
But that's not the conversation
I
we're
know
having.
that. I know that. I think again, I think a lot of this is education. I think a lot of young people don't know what the Hamas flag is, whatever. I think it's really dangerous when either side overgeneralizes and labels the other side as this. You and I will end this. You would say it's the vast majority, it's almost all of these protesters have been pro Hamas. I'd say the vast majority of these protesters have been anti-Israel.
Let's meet in the middle. Let's say sympathetic to Hamas. Can we agree to that?
I'd say sympathetic to anything that would level the playing field with Israel. I think that's about as far as most of their thinking can take them. I'll give you the final word, IL, and this has been fun, man. And I think the world of you, even though you're so messed up on Trump. But we'll talk about it.
It's Liberation Day soon, Joe.
Yeah, Liberation Day. Liberation Day. As someone who is very pro-Israel and fights anti-Semitism wherever I can, I'll give you my final 20 seconds, then I'll give you the final word. I don't want Jewish students protected from speech on college campuses. I don't want any student protected from speech. I think what happened post October 7th, the colleges and universities generally suck, and they let way too much get way out of hand, and they let students do too much that move beyond speech. And I worry and I believe that the right under Trump and Trumpism in the guise of fighting anti-Semitism, the Trump administration is going way too far, trying to use the heavy hand of government to uniquely protect Jewish students from speech, deport students who don't like Israel or don't think like they think. And I think that's a bad, dangerous place to be. It's not America. We should be like the utmost defenders of unadulterated free speech, and it will come back to bite. It won't protect Jewish students if we try to overly protect Jewish students. I'm done. I'll give you the final word, brother.
First of all, thank you so much. I think this was a great conversation. It definitely challenged me to think. I I think you come at it from a different place because you're someone that in your camp, someone who supported Kamala and Biden, that that has been speaking out unapologetically, condemning the college protests, condemning campus protests. But the majority of people in your camp, quote unquote, who are now attacking Trump, saying he's overreaching, were silent for 18 months about everything that happened. We're completely silent about all the conduct violations, not this free speech. And so I think it's hypocritical on that end, is that on the one hand, you have people who are suddenly so focused on free speech and academic freedom on college campuses once Trump is involved. But for the 18 months leading up to it, they were completely silent when you were a student and you couldn't even enter your classroom because there was an intifada happening. So I think it's just a
I agree.
juxtaposition. In terms of Trump's policies,
By
again,
the way, I'll say this. I agree with everything you said. And the left ignored what was going on the college campuses. I do believe Trump is an overreaction. And to me, it's just like immigration. The left ignored the issue of immigration for a long, long time. Now Trump is enacting extreme un-American shit on immigration. Go.
yeah, no, it's definitely a reactionary movement that a lot of people are just fed up that there's a lot of common sense policies that should have been in place prior that need to be in place now. And I agree, a lot of it is reactionary. And just the last thing I'll say on specifically the people who have been deported is these people were not anti-Israel and just peaceful protesters. The people like Mahmoud Khalil led student groups which violently took over buildings. He was the spokesperson of a group that openly posted, "We want the destruction of Western civilization." Well, if they posted on Instagram and he's the spokesperson, I think you could tie it back at least somewhat to him. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And so it's weird because, Joe, we agree that some of the protests haven't been peaceful, correct?
Oh, I think it's been a mix of everything. Yeah.
Yeah, but some of them haven't been peaceful, right?
Oh, complete. Some of them, agreed, Il. Some of the protests have moved beyond free speech.
Okay,
Completely agree.
so I guess my final question is, who's being held accountable then?
Well, people were arrested. People have been expelled from school. And all I'm saying to you is
Who's been expelled from school?
students have been expelled from
Who?
schools on these
At what
campuses.
school?
I don't know the names, but students have been expelled because of their behavior. They've been kicked out of school because they've broken school policy and broken the law. When it comes to Khalil, all I'm saying is we grabbed him a month and a half ago to try to deport him. A month and a half later, there are no charges of any crimes. He'll have his day in court in a few weeks. The government will have their ability to make their case. I don't want anyone deported because of how they think, believe, or what they say.
But if the judge rules in his favor, then it's constitutional. What do you mean?
No.
I thought
If
we
the
trust the
judge
court.
rules to deport him, done. The judge, our
Oh.
court spoke. I'm just saying my broad principle is I don't want anyone expelled or deported or denied a student visa because of what they believe. I think that is utterly American. You commit a crime, you do something else, gone. That's
Yeah.
all I'm saying.
No, I mean, I agree with that. And that's why he's getting due process. And he hasn't just been deported.
No, thank God for that, because the Trump administration would have yanked him out of the country like they did that other guy down in El Salvador in a heartbeat. IL, thank you, my brother. By the way, follow IL on Twitter at EYAKOBY. Thanks, man. I'll stay in touch. Love you.
Thanks so much. And happy Good Friday. Is it Happy
Thank
Good
you,
Friday?
IL. Huh?
Is it Happy Good Friday?
Have a good, reflective Good Friday.
Okay. Have a great, reflective Good Friday.
Hope
Great
you had a
seeing
blessed Passover last week, my friend.
We're still in it.
That's right.
In it.
Thank
No
you.
bread.
Thanks. Thanks, man. Be brave, everybody.
Thank you for listening. Remember to listen, share, and follow The Social Contract with Joe Walsh on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everywhere great podcasts are found. And be sure to leave a 5-star review. This has been The Social Contract